Hello everyone, this is David Secchi from the COMAC Research Cluster at the University of Southern Denmark. Before I start my talk, I would like to apologize for not being there at the conference with you as I would have liked, but some previous commitment is holding me here in Denmark for the start of the semester. In this short talk, I would like to discuss briefly about the empirical study that features in the report that, together with Danusha and Phil, we submitted and published with the IPO. The empirical study has been conducted through the data collected by Economist, and it spans over 17 websites for file sharing of 3D printing material, and it was extracted in January 2014, and therefore it covers the period that goes from the beginning of this 3D printing file sharing platform, so it's 2008 until January 2014. I'll start with the 3D printing at a glance, which is a figure that we presented in the report right at the beginning of the report, where some of the key information is summarized, and I will briefly go over the description, which is some sort of a state-of-the-art of the 3D printing as it was on these online platforms up to January 2014. So the overview will deal with data mostly, and refers to platforms, licenses, users, things, which are the files that are placed online on these websites, the categories, and the brands. As far as platforms and users are concerned, as this table shows, we have that the first 7 platforms basically cover 99% of users. This means that the remaining platforms share just the remaining 1%. If we now turn our attention to licenses, we have several types that can be selected by users. What it is clear is that most of the files are not attached to any license. So we have about 68,000 files that are associated with licenses, and this is about 35% of the total number of files. The 2 most common licenses that are used are the Creative Commons with 43% of attributions, and the Commons attribution with 47%. The other types of licenses cover around 1%, or the GNU that covers 2.1%, or attribution non-commercial 3.5%. It's a very low percentage compared to the Creative Commons and the Commons attributions. If we then move to the number of files uploaded, well, the total number of files uploaded that we could find in the span of the years for these 17 platforms is 385,000 files. Each user, on average, uploads 3.7 files. However, this average number is not representative of what really happens, because what really happens in 3D printing, as well as in many other phenomena taking place on the internet, is that there are very few people who upload an incredible number of files. And if we look at the figure representing the 1% of the most active users between 2008 to 2014, we can see that this 1% uploads an incredible number of files, whereas the vast majority of users upload one file, probably. So it's up to very few people who are very active and probably strongly believe in 3D printing and the potentials for this tool, who upload most of the files in the platforms. Now, to try and understand what happens in the 3D printing world, we also gathered information on the categories that define each individual file. These are named tags, and we have files with multiple tags. So there are different tags associated with the files. Now, for about 23% of the files, which is roughly 90,000, we have no category at all. In this table, we have the number of files and the cumulative numbers on the right. So that, for example, miniature, we have the 13% of the files have this tag, and for art, we have the 10% of the files have this tag. Another popular tag is jewelry. We have that 9% of the files are labeled as jewelry, and as we go down, we can see that the percentage associated with each name tag decreases, so that games, for example, are only associated to 5% of the files. Finally, to say something about brands, we also looked at the description of the file. So every file has a tag, also a short description. Well, not all of them have descriptions, but some of them have descriptions. We looked into the descriptions to find something that would refer to a brand or a name of the product or something that was recognizable. And we isolated about 40 brand names, of which 27 appeared more than 100 times. And we focused our attention to these 27 appearing more than 100 times. If we look at the table here, we have that iPhone, so a file that is somehow related to the iPhone, covers about 21% of the products. Then we have something related to robot and other things. But what I would like to point out is that the Apple and its products appears extremely often in the description of the files. Now that we have a descriptive picture of 3D printing on these 17 platforms, let's move and look at some inference. First of all, we can look at the number of views, the number of downloads, and price. Now, it appears from the data that views and downloads have a very low impact on the files uploaded. So this means that it seems that there is no relation, no clear relation between how many times a file is viewed or downloaded and the user uploading more files. Now, this is related to what I found out in relation to the behavior of individual users. You see on this figure that there are 6 of the top uploaders, so users who upload many files. And on the x-axis you have the time, and on the y-axis you have the number of files. Now, as you can see, there is some sort of reverse U-shaped curve that shows that as time goes by, users upload more files and then start uploading less files. So maybe the 6th user is an exception, but the other 5 seem to follow this type of trend. User number 5, you see there is a kind of spike instead of a curve, uploaded an incredible amount of files, up to 140 files, and then turned down to about 30 over the last period. So this means that there is a behavior that is related to uploads of files that is probably related to time. And this, unfortunately, is a limitation of the study, because we didn't have time of upload available for most of the files that were in the platforms. So what we did, we just use regression analysis on views and downloads and price without taking time into consideration. We can do time, we can use time for just a minority of the data that we have and the users that uploaded files, and so we did, and so we came up with 6 plots, but that certainly deserves further investigation. Some of the files are associated with a price, so that there are platforms that allow people to charge a price for downloading a particular file, and this is consistent with the most active users. So the more people upload files, the more likely is that they put a price on some of the files. And then there are 2 platforms in particular, SketchUp and Thingiverse, that seem to attract the highest numbers of downloads and views. So in particular, these 2 platforms seem to be the most popular, or were the most popular up to January 2014. As far as categories and keywords or tags are considered, we have that those files with the tags such as art, mechanic, robot, home, and architecture are also related to a particular price. So price is more likely to appear when a file has one of these elements. And then model is particularly related to the number of downloads. This probably means that up to January 2014, these platforms were probably still for professionals, people who use 3D printing for work, or and I'm referring to probably engineers mostly, or people who do modeling as a job. That's all for the quick talk. I'll leave the implications and conclusions to Dinusha and the others there. Again, apologies for not being able to be there with you. I can still take some questions on the quantitative part. If you have some, you can write me an email at secchi@sdu.dk, and well, enjoy the conference, and thank you very much for your attention.